Finding Nemo is a Pixar classic, and its sequel, Finding Dory, is a very solid revisit to that world. But what if I told you that between the release of Finding Nemo and Finding Dory, Disney, without the blessing of Pixar, almost made a Finding Nemo sequel that would have seen Marlin get captured, reveal that Nemo had a long-lost brother, and take place inside of a SeaWorld-style theme park? Well, that's the movie we'll be discussing today, as we break down the development, plot, and cancellation of Nemo 2. The year was 2004, and things weren't looking great for Disney and Pixar. After years of building tension between the companies, Pixar announced that once they finished out their existing 5-picture deal with Disney, they were planning to part ways and end their relationship. Within the walls of Disney, its at the time CEO, Michael Eisner, wasn't at all shaken by this loss. In fact, he believed that Disney didn't actually need Pixar, because as a part of their deal, Disney owned everything that Pixar created while working with them, which meant that Disney could just make sequels to Pixar's movies without their involvement. Eisner figured that the audience wouldn't even be able to tell the difference. In early 2005, news broke that Disney had quietly spun up a studio called Circle 7 Animation, whose sole mission was to produce annual sequels to Pixar's movies. True to that charge, the studio planned to release Toy Story 3 in 2008, a sequel to Monsters, Inc., which would later be known as Lost in Scaradise in 2009, and a sequel to Finding Nemo would anchor 2010. After pitching her take on the sequel to Disney, Laurie Craig, best known for Polly and Ella Enchanted, would be hired to pen the film's script. Craig would submit the film's first draft, simply titled Nemo 2, on October 26, 2005. Though, within only a few short months, the project would wind up sleeping with the fishes. But before we get into why, let's take a deep dive into the film's plot. Our story begins a few years ago. Soon-to-be parents, Marlin and Coral, look over their bed of eggs, discussing the names of their nearborns, before the couple is attacked by a barracuda. Marlin comes to and finds that Coral and all of the eggs are gone, save for one. Marlin cradles the cracked egg and names his son Nemo. But little does he know, nearby a second egg survived, knocked out of the bed, and quickly carried away by turbulence. In present day, at the request of his friends, Nemo recounts the story of his adventure of being taken to Sydney, fighting off all the humans, and saving everybody. Dory and some other parents watch on with Marlin, who worries that ever since they returned from Sydney, Nemo's gotten a bit of a big head. As he worries, Dory reminds her friend to do his deep breathing exercises to calm down. As Mr. Ray arrives to pick the kids up for school, he checks in with Dory, asking her how her memory exercises are going. Later, Dory encounters a panicked dolphin named Percy, who has a blinking light attached to his fin. He tells Dory that he was dropped off from a boat a few days ago and thinks he's lost. He wants to go home to the coastal marine amusement park, Planet Blue. Meanwhile, Nemo encounters another clownfish named Remy, who claims to be his brother. They find Marlin, and seeing that he looks like Coral, knows that this is his son. Remy explains that he was raised by vicious fighting firefish, but he always felt different. So when word of Marlin's scattered eggs and the whole adventure to Sydney spread across the ocean, he came to find them. As Remy begins to integrate himself into the family, spending seemingly every moment with Marlin and Nemo's friends, Nemo's jealousy leads to a bitter rivalry between the brothers, and Marlin worries that he should have searched for more of his eggs. But Remy also grew up to be so great, maybe he was better off without him. This all comes to a head on Nemo and Remy's birthday. The brothers fight over what game to play first at their birthday party, when an overwhelmed Marlin decides that they'll play Remy's game first. Nemo swims off dejected, and Marlin wonders if he's cut out to raise two sons. Remy goes to get Nemo, but this quickly turns into a shouting match before Marlin intervenes, separates them, and blows up on his boys. He can't take the fighting anymore. Remy blames Marlin for abandoning him, and Nemo denounces Remy as his brother, which Marlin gets upset at. Just then, Percy barrels through the excitement, running away from a net, which also inadvertently scoops up Marlin. Dory makes her way over as the brothers begin to blame each other, but explain to her what happened. Upon hearing about a dolphin with a light on his fin, Dory manages to remember that he's from Planet Blue, and somehow knows how to get there. Meanwhile, Marlin and Percy are released into the massive dolphin tank at Planet Blue, and Marlin realizes he's not in the ocean anymore. Dory, Nemo, and Remy make their way to the bay outside of Planet Blue. Remy makes a hasty attempt to get into the park using its intake pipe, almost getting the trio sucked in and sliced by an impeller in the process. And then Nemo makes a hasty attempt to enter the park using its outflow pipe, which is gushing water at a speed too fast to swim against. Before long, they're approached by Gil, who has since parted ways with the tank gang. Upon hearing their plan, he's wary. Breaking into Planet Blue? No fish has ever escaped from there. But after some convincing, Gil agrees to help them. He enlists some sea lions to steal a parasail and shove it into the park's intake pipe, stopping the impeller and the water from flowing out of the outflow pipe, allowing them to swim freely inside. He tells them that he doesn't know how long the parasail will last, so get in, get Marlin, and get out. The pipe eventually splits in multiple directions. Remy hastily chooses one, and they all wind up in the octopus tank and are attacked by the cephalopod, but eventually escape back into the pipe. Nemo yells at Remy for choosing the wrong direction, but Dory tells them when they were in the tank, she saw a map on the wall and knows where to go. Meanwhile, Marlin meets the theatrical show dolphins in the dolphin enclosure and tells them how he needs to get back to his family. Percy suggests splashing Marlin over the side of the tank, over the sidewalk, back into the bay. He's made that jump 1,000 times. So he launches Marlin, who winds up falling short, landing inside of a janitor's bucket on the sidewalk. In the bay, Gil worries as he sees two Planet Blue divers begin to clear the parasail from the pipe. Marlin's bucket winds up in the polar bear exhibit, where it's knocked over into the pool with its 3 inhabitants, Blanca, Louie, and Brad. Blanca attempts to attack Marlin, but it's clear that she's a bit of a klutz, and gets picked on for it by the others. Marlin urges her to stand up for herself, that she can't let her life be dictated by anxiety. It's not a pleasant way to live. As it turns out, she might be even more neurotic than Marlin. Dory, Nemo, and Remy make their way to the dolphin tank, where they're told what happened and that, according to park pigeons, Marlin is now in the polar bear exhibit. Remy races off without thinking, but Nemo turns back to the dolphins to ask a few more questions, and Dory races between them, exasperated, which attracts the attention of a park trainer who scoops Dory up and tries to scoop up the brothers, but they escape with the help of their new friends. In the bay, Gil watches on in horror as the divers clear the pipe. Nemo and Remy get sucked into the pipe and spit out in a pirate-themed tank in a part of the park that's under remodel. The trip leaves them both a bit queasy, and for a fleeting moment, these bickering brothers bond over the fact that they might be the only 2 fish in the ocean that get seasick. Meanwhile, the park staff manages to repair the polar bear exhibit's broken chiller. Although it will take some time for the water to get really cold again, Marlin is already noticing that the water is getting colder. He tries to convince Blanca to rip a grate off of a wall so he could get back to his boys. But they're interrupted by Louie and Brad trying to attack and eat Marlin. Blanca stands up to them, but is pushed over by Brad. She calls herself a loser, which Marlin refutes, and she reveals that the others bully her because they're from the Arctic. She's just from Cleveland. When she first got to the park, she tripped and fell, breaking a claw, and since then, they've called her Fumblefoot, and Marlin is surprised to feel a pang of sympathy for her. Remy and Nemo split up to find a way out of the tank. After asking a clam how he could get out and find his father, he's told by this Zen mollusk that he's better off finding himself. If he depends on nobody and relies on himself entirely, he can never be hurt or disappointed. And Remy takes this to heart when he finds an exit and tries to sneak out without Nemo, who catches him red-handed. Nemo jabs him, and Remy teases his brother, as he's been doing over the course of the story, about his little fin. So Nemo takes a healthy swing at him, and Remy flies back and gets scraped up. Shaken and near tears, he flees, and quickly comes face to face with a venomous sea snake. But Nemo catches up, and they manage to confuse the snake by making him believe he's seeing double. They escape into the pipe, the snake on their tail like a bullet, and the three wind up in a tide pool. The snake sends everybody into a panic, and the staff removes it from the pool. By this point, Remy's scrape wound is clearly infected, and he's not doing well. He's scooped up by a net, which Nemo also jumps into, and they're taken to an isolation tank where a scientist treats Remy with a fish antibiotic. Meanwhile, Gil rallies the sea lions to block the pipe again, and they pull anything they can into the water to stop the intake pipe, and while they don't stop it completely, they manage to slow the water flow and, as a side effect, slow down the water chiller in the polar bear exhibit. In that tank, Blanca makes a pass at Marlin, but he tells her that his heart is with his boys and that he's a terrible father. They should have been friends, but they're just at each other's throats. And Blanca tells him that if he could handle a polar bear, he could definitely handle two little fish, and then unsuccessfully tries to pry the grate cover off of the outflow pipe. In the isolation tank, Remy is delirious as he heals and tells Nemo that he was envious of him, that he was smart and could never be like him, so he lied about being a fighting fish. He was raised by weedfish and never fit in, so he came looking for Marlin because he's all he has. The next morning, Nemo and Remy, who's almost completely healed, are transferred to a massive Australian reef tank, where they reunite with Dory and her massive family. As it turns out, Dory is from Planet Blue. After realizing that the tank's outflow pipe is inaccessible, Nemo notices that the staff empties the tank's skimmers into a drain that leads to the outflow pipe. Nemo and Remy head for the skimmer, but Dory isn't sure if she wants to go. This is her home. She fits in here. Nemo reasons that her being different is what makes her so special, but Dory's mind is seemingly made up. The brothers jump into the skimmer. Just as the skimmer is about to be emptied, Dory decides to jump in with them. The park staff has been trying to keep the water chilled in the polar bear pool, so they've been adding snow and ice to the water. At first, Marlin is in awe of snow, but quickly falls ill, fading in and out of consciousness. Blanca cradles her friend as he begins to fade, before quickly putting him in a bucket, which she picks up and manages to escape the enclosure and rush through the park, hoping to get Marlin to the bay. Tourists scream and scatter, Brad and Louie cheer her on, and the polar bear keepers burst out with tranquilizer guns. One manages to connect with Blanca. As she collapses and drops the bucket, Marlin flops out into a marshy landscaping pond in the middle of the park. He thanks his friend, vowing to never forget her. As she dozes off, she tells him goodbye and that she loves him. In the bay, the sea lions fully plug the pipe again when a diver comes back to clear it. But Gil isn't worried this time. He has a contingency plan. Nemo, Remy, and Dory emerge into a pool of murky water. As it settles, they see Marlin. The family has a touching reunion, and Dory notices the outflow pipe exit. As they swim through, park management begins to backflush the intake pipe to clear the debris. Valves begin to shut rapidly, getting closer and closer, and everybody realizes that they need to turn around. And as they rocket out of the pipe, Dory crashes into a root. When Dory comes to, her memory loss is gone. She even remembers why she forgot everything. She hit her head when she escaped for the first time. With a newfound sense of awareness, she leads her friends through perils and manages to mount and escape with tactical precision. They wind up copying the strategy of her first escape, which sends them shooting off of a log flume ride, riding the giant splash over the fence and out into the bay. As they splash down, Dory hits her head again, and she's back to her old forgetful self. The sea lions and Gil see off the family as Nemo thanks them for everything. As they head home, Nemo and Remy can't wait to tell everybody about the adventure, and they begin to bicker, but this time, it's brotherly bickering with an undercurrent of love. As they head off into the deep, a family reunited once and for all. I think that this is a solid script for a Finding Nemo sequel. Adding Remy is a clever idea that keeps the characters' dynamics fresh, where now Dory has to take on more of a Marlin-style role of being responsible for these two kids, and now Nemo, who's been an only child for his whole life, now has to contend with having a brother, which is a really relatable dynamic. I adore the idea of Marlin trying to work on his neuroticism. It shows growth between this and the original, and I feel like the movie makes really solid use of its SeaWorld style setting to introduce a lot of the fun side characters. Overall, I think this is a very serviceable sequel to Finding Nemo, and if allowed to take another pass and make some tweaks to the script, I think that Craig could have made it even better and really would have knocked it out of the park. So that raises the question, with a really solid direction and a first draft mapped out for the movie, why did it get canned? In September of 2005, Michael Eisner stepped down from his CEO position and was succeeded by Bob Iger, who felt that Disney's relationship with Pixar was incredibly valuable over the preceding decade. After a few months of negotiations, Disney would announce that they would be purchasing Pixar for over $7 billion. With Circle 7's main charge being the production of these Pixar sequels, Iger was put in a tough spot, because Pixar might have wanted to make sequels to their movies on their own terms someday. So the decision was ultimately made to close Circle 7, transition most of the staff to Walt Disney Feature Animation, and cancel all of the studio's projects. While Pixar would go on to produce a very respectable Finding Nemo sequel of their own, I really believe that this script, had it been produced, would have edged out Finding Dory as a slightly better film. So ultimately, I think it's a real shame that Nemo 2 was never made. But that's the story of Nemo 2, and the end of yet another episode of Canned Goods. So until next time, thank you so much for watching, be good to each other, and stay Hemmas.